Alrighty, we are live. Hey everybody, hope you guys are having a great day. Give me 1 second. I'm going to turn around and I'm going to share this live video over with our Facebook group so all the Facebook group members can see this as well. So 1 second, as soon as Chrome does its thing. And here we go. Hope you guys are having a great Thursday. Today with me, I've got the one and only Mr. Kyler Nixon. Kyler, how you doing?
Hey, I'm just living the dream. Like I said, just living my best life.
Yeah, here we go. Okay, I'm sharing over to the group real fast. Posting to share to, I don't want to share to a group. Sharing a group, which was a little bit more seamless, but can't have everything you want. That's, and typing while you're doing a live thing is always harder than good
Well,
luck.
it's really not. It really doesn't take that long, but it feels like you're spending an hour doing it, so then all the pressure's on.
Yes, here we go. All right, there we go. All right. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us again for another episode of the Church Communications Podcast. I'm your host, Daryl Girardi. Today, we got a special guest host, co-host with me, Mr. Kyler Nixon.
Hey
Kyler,
guys, how's it going? Yeah,
all the way
excited to
from
be here.
all the way from Arizona. Today's sponsor
Yeah,
is Pixel Faith, guys. Pixel Faith has been around for 17 years. For 17 years, Pixel Faith has been serving churches of all sizes around the world with broadcast-grade streaming 24/7 live in-person support. I'm really familiar with the work they do. I'm going to break away from the typical ad copy they give you to tell you that actually we use Pixel Faith here at Brentwood Baptist, and I will tell you, they are amazing at not only the quality of the product they deliver, but they're really, really good at customer service. So my rep is named Sarah. She's amazing. I love working with her. They make streaming super, super easy with their Facebook integration and a whole bunch of other tools. They're really, really good to work with. Definitely want to check them out. They've got a free digital media consultation that you can get with them. If you go to pixelfaith.com/podcast, that's pixelfaith.com/podcast. They're great to work with. I definitely think you should check them out. All right, so here's what we're doing today, guys. We're talking about the Churchome app. And if you don't know what Churchome is the church of Judah Smith, where he's the senior pastor. It used to be Church of the City, or no, City
the
Church?
the city church. Yeah, it's also Justin Bieber's church. I'm pretty
Oh,
sure.
it is Justin Bieber's church. So there you go.
So
And Russell
fun
Wilson.
fact.
I think Russell Wilson of the Seattle Seahawks goes there as well.
Either way, it's a celebrity pastor, celebrity church.
Yes, pastor. So he made an announcement, I would say, like 2 weeks ago, that they were opening a new location. So there's a whole video you can
Right.
Google, you can find it. And
Right.
the video says we're opening up a new location. He goes, "You guys ready for it? It's Churchome Global." And basically, from what I gathered from the video, the thrust of it was, we're going to launch a new campus and it's going to be in the palm of your hand,
Right.
i.e. your
Right.
phone. So that's kind of the baseline of where he started, which I think, in my mind, shaped how this whole thing has been viewed, and probably in a pretty negative light. What do you think about that, Kyler?
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, I liked the thought behind it, obviously. So I'll preface by saying that I like the app in general from a
Yes.
30,000 foot view, but
Yeah.
I agree. I think if you've ever actually gone on the app, it's incredible, and we'll jump into
Yes.
a little bit more of that today. But the way they approached it was like, we're going to do church in the palm of your hand, and I really feel like they could have talked about how we're equipping believers all across the world. Like, that's really what this is. That's what it's doing. It's not just church. It's not just church in the palm of your hand. Like, it's an extension of the church in a lot of ways. So that was a little bit, I think they spent a lot of time and money on this app. And I think probably when it came up to announce it, there wasn't a ton of, maybe thought put into that. And I apologize if anyone was involved in that part of it, in the launch of it, because I love the app and it's incredible. But
we should put that a caveat for this whole episode. If you work at Churchome, we think you're wonderful. We think you're great people. This is nothing personal.
No. And I personally use this app, like, beyond just trying it out for church communications, and I work with churches and stuff. Like, I use this app almost every day. So I personally love it and use it.
Yeah.
So don't hate us, don't kill us.
It is well designed. Yeah. So let's take a step back here and let's kind of talk about the app itself, and then we're going to get to the philosophy behind it. We'll get to the philosophical underpinnings of it, if you will, later on. But let's talk about the app in general. What are some of the things? Because I think, by the way, I think it's an app that's worth checking out based off of just some of the small nuances of what they've done.
Right.
Like, have you played with the prayer feature?
Yeah, like the
Yeah.
hold down to pray, like that type of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So describe what happens for people who don't know.
Yeah, I'll pull it up. So basically, there's a tab on the Churchome app that is for prayer, and so you can go in and you can create your own prayer request, or you can pray for other people's prayer requests. So like, I'll go up here and I just logged in. It said my friend is getting married tomorrow. I pray that the Lord blesses her, her husband, and their life together. So I'm like, oh, that's cool. I want to take a minute to pray for that. I can tap on it, and then I can pop up the screen will pop up. It tells me the prayer request, the name of the person, and at the very bottom there's these two little prayer icons, and it says press down with two fingers when you pray. And when you do that, I'm doing it right now. I'll pray for this person after, so I'm not a sinner. But these little like hearts pop up, and it tells you, like, it lets you know there's some feedback there that that they're praying. So
yeah, you get like this little heart. Yeah, these like little heart emojis start appearing around your fingers and start floating.
Which the only thing I don't love about that was the first time I used it, and this is just me being petty, but the first time I used it, the vibration of like the feedback threw me off. So I was praying for the person, and then it would be like beep, beep, beep. And I stopped praying, and it totally just distracted me. So
that makes sense.
But otherwise, I love it. It's a cool feature. It shows like kind of that connection between you and the person you're praying for. So
yeah. And I think this is one of the things that, like, this is one of the things I think is interesting is what I think, again, this is how I think if you were to say this is their church app for their church, I think you all of a sudden you look at all these sets of features, and I think a much more positive light. It's when they call it global that we all kind of go, like, do you really expect that to be somebody's church? Now, the other aspect is the community aspect, which is basically, I kind of got the impression these are like conversation starters, is what this kind of felt like. Like, you're not joining. I guess they do have small groups, but they also had like conversation type aspect of stuff. Is that
So my impression of it is there's two types of community components to this app, and this is something I think they actually really did really, really well, that a lot of churches haven't taken this step to do yet, especially for online church and stuff like that. The first is this connect through online groups and online conversations. So I mean, if you're in this church communications group, or if you're active in other small groups or masterminds online or something like that, you know that you can find community online like that. That is, you've experienced it. I've experienced it. It's not outrageous to say you can find community online. Like, some of my best friends are people I've met on the internet.
Right.
So there's that component of it where you can have conversation online, talk with people, but they took it a step further. And this is what I really love that they did. You can find local groups in your area. So I'm in Phoenix, and there's no groups in Phoenix currently. So it relies on a little bit of like local adoption for it. And there's some ideas that I would have there in how to do that. But if you're in Seattle, or if you're in other areas where Churchome already has a good presence, like, I don't know if you want to search Nashville or something like that, Daryl, but you can join local groups, like in-person meetup type small groups, which I think is really cool that they work that into the app.
Yeah, I'm checking right now. I'm on the app, folks. I'm not just like reading like Twitter mentions or something like that.
Sorry. If you just scroll down, it's right below the Connect tab. It says find a group or start a group.
Yeah,
they already have 400.
Yeah, see, they don't have anything in my area. I'm checking my church zip code as well. Find a group. Yeah, that would be a no. That's, again, like, okay, that's interesting in terms of this, of that feature. Yeah, I think it's done well. I mean, and a lot of churches have group finders built into their app, so this is nothing new. I think, again, the global aspect of it changes a little bit the nature of it. Now, one of the other things so I'm getting these notifications. Have you seen or have you watched any of the Daily Spark, which is their kind of like their daily devotional?
Yeah, I actually haven't. I hadn't had a chance to watch it until today, but it's essentially just a minute and a half video of Judah Smith giving like a spark, like a quick one part of a message. And obviously he has tons and tons of messages that they can pull content from. He's a very dynamic speaker. So I think it's really cool. And it takes, like, if I don't log in and do anything, I might take a minute and watch that Daily Spark as I'm getting ready in the morning or something like that. So I think it's a cool, easy way, like an easy, like, low level of commitment for somebody to engage with the app.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's a totally, I get it. And in terms of features I would steal, I would totally, I'm looking at the app right now.
Yeah,
I would,
for sure.
It's the Daily Spark right there. I'd totally steal that. I would steal that in a heartbeat. In fact, we kind of do that with posting stuff to Facebook, but I definitely think this is an interesting way of doing it. Now, moving from that, they also push their worship. And then one of the interesting things about worship is they push this whole concept of a lobby. Like, I would get these notifications on Sunday morning, like, come to the lobby and hang out as you wait for worship to start. To which I'm
Right.
like, okay, virtual lobby, which is essentially just a chat room, is what it is.
Right. Right.
And so I, to me, like I feel for some reason it felt more awkward than it would be if I'd actually gone to a church and been in an actual church's lobby. Like I'm okay with being in a lobby,
Yeah.
not knowing anybody. I can, I can kind of get a feel. But this was like just a
Right.
faceless people just flying up on my screen, just saying random things. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. That's an area that I think the church is exploring that they haven't quite figured it
yeah,
out yet. And I don't know if we ever will. I don't know if that's
I don't know if we're
like how
supposed
people
to.
are really designed. But I mean, you think of like VR church and however you
Yeah,
feel about that, whatever. Like they're doing a good job with that. But one of the reasons why they're doing a good job is because it's not necessarily faceless. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like
I'm with you.
there's a level of like it feels personal and it feels like one on one. And I don't know if you can get that with a keyboard. I think you can get community there through these groups, but I don't know if like I think what you're getting at is if you go to a church in the lobby, you're walking around, like you're going to engage in a level of small talk, right?
Right.
The groups that they have on here are not necessarily built for small talk. Like they're like more heavy conversations, a little bit more like
Yeah.
you can jump in and add your 2 cents. But on a church lobby, like online, what are you going to say really? Like
Well, yeah. So
how's the weather? You know what I mean? Like it's kind of it's a
let me
weird concept a little bit.
Well, yeah, let me push on this idea of community a little bit because here's one of the things I struggle with in terms of people when people say you can form community online, which I think you can on a certain level. I think stuff like what you and I are doing right now, where there's video involved and there's actual like conversations involved, where I can read your face and you can read my face and we can read our inflections and our tone.
Right.
That totally changes the nature of a conversation.
Right.
Because it's just a text-based conversation. I can't read all those things. So I struggle with the idea that community somehow um, can be done in that just text-based pure format because I think you, from a sensory standpoint, you literally, all you're doing is basically just doing a text-based type of relationship. And I just don't know if that's,
Right.
you can really go on the level. Like, I think to me, I want, community to me is like, it's an hour and a half conversation over a meal. That's when you get beyond
Right.
just the how's the weather and you go deep dive.
Right, right,
And I
right.
don't
Yeah,
know.
and it's hard to get that in a lobby before a
Yeah,
service starts online. And I don't even know if you necessarily are going to completely get that at a church lobby, but it's a little bit more natural because you're used to running into people. You're running into people at the store, or
yeah,
you like that's a little bit more natural, I guess, for people. And I have some thoughts on that I'll share at the end. But
cool. Yeah.
um,
Well, so yeah, so
cool.
I actually attended a worship service via this, and so what's interesting was there wasn't a music component; it went straight into preaching.
Okay,
Um,
interesting.
yeah, and so the other thing was I thought was interesting is you could give on, you're supposed to be able to give online during the sermon, which the interface seemed really nice. The problem was I couldn't do it. Like I don't know if there was an error or like if it's basically because I'm not logged into their giving platform system.
Right.
So I try to give, like I just say, hey, I want to see how this process works because I don't
Yeah.
know from a technical standpoint how you would give and not have to leave the app because you have to leave the app in order to give. Otherwise, they're getting hit with Apple's 30%, cut of the share, which is why,
Right. Right.
yeah, PSA, anybody who offers you online mobile giving knows that you have to leave the app in order to be able to do online giving. You have to do it through Safari. So
Yeah.
anyway, I thought it was like, oh, it's interesting. Like I'm missing the music component of it. All right, it's
Hmm.
Judah's sermon. Great. I can watch it in real time with people. I'm assuming it was live
Yeah.
and not a replay. But I just, again, like here's the other aspect of it is, when we say worship, when we talk about two or more gathered in his name, do we say, does that a virtual gathering or does that need to be a physical gathering? I mean, we can talk about that more
Yeah.
later, but I think that we're rubbing up against some of these questions of redefining some
Hmm.
stuff that I don't know if the church is comfortable with.
Yeah, and I don't know if anyone has quite figured that out yet, and a lot of, I mean, think about even like Life Church, like the kings of like
Yeah,
live streaming church online, and I don't know if they've quite, I just don't know if any church has figured out how do we navigate this actual like worship experience in an online format, because I think
well,
everything else that Church Home is doing on this app is really
yeah,
great and it's strong for the most part, but that's the one thing, and it's not their fault, it's just nobody has quite figured out how to navigate that, because it's like I'm watching a sermon, but am I attending church? You know what I mean? Like I'm giving, but am I like it's different. You know what I mean? And I just
yeah,
don't think anyone's figured that out yet.
yeah. I think one of the chief criticisms, which I get, is how do you do the sacraments? Like, how do you view
Right.
certain things? Like, here's my question. So I guess we're shifting now into the philosophical part of this conversation, which is, okay, so how you define church and what a church function and what a church does is really important, because when you have that definition, then you can determine whether or not this app actually fits the definition of what a church should be. So my brain, the way I'm wired is that in my mind, your church should some way serve your local community. That's missional component it should have some sort of
the storehouse and the local
I think you should have an Acts 1:8 model, which is basically you're doing something local, do something stateside, and do something international. Well, you can't do something local on this app unless your community group has a missional component to it, and maybe they drive community groups to that. I don't know. But that's a hard thing for me to kind of wrap my mind around. Like, how would they pull that off? How do you pull off the sacraments? How do you pull off baptism? How do you pull off the Lord's Supper, communion, if you will?
Right. Well, I think a lot of that even depends on like the attendee, if you will. Like, if there's some church online services that'll say, hey, if you're at home, go into your fridge, grab, or next week we're going to take communion. So please purchase grape juice and crackers, or something like that. And they do that, but at the same time, it relies on that person to actually do it. And so, which is going to be the case regardless. They have to do it at church, or they have to come to church. But I was thinking about that too. I think Churchome ticks a lot of boxes of what I personally think church is and what I feel like the Bible says about church through this app. But there's also several components that it falls a little bit short. One of those is that serving component. Like, how can you serve online? The other thing that I was trying to figure out, and they may do it, I just haven't had enough experience with the app, but one major role of the church is to build up and use the gifts for, growing and encouraging and building the church. And so it's like, how are we able to use some of these different giftings in that setting if it's a little bit more of a like a little less of a participant model and a little bit more of like a viewing spectator type model. And they might figure that out. I just didn't feel like I got that.
But I don't know if you can. And let me kind of I'm not going to rant, but here's the issue I have. I think on some level my question is why go to this church versus the church that's just down the road from you? And I think it's partly is if the argument is that it's ease of use and you don't have to get off your couch, then that's a pretty lame argument.
Right.
When we look historically speaking, we know that when we started building highways, we had people leave the inner city and started leaving the inner city and started building suburbs. And when you built suburbs, then all of a sudden, you all of a sudden had the ability to travel to different churches who met your style, theology, et cetera, et cetera. You had this ability to be more mobile in how you pick churches. The internet takes that mobility to a next level. And I think at some point we have to admit that's not good. Because if your whole church is virtual and your logic, I get people who travel. I get people who are like, I'm in the middle of Idaho and there's nothing around me. I could understand on a certain level those arguments. But for a majority of us, we probably have a church within 30 minutes of us that probably meet some basic criteria. And if they don't meet your criteria, then maybe you need to go in and help that church meet that criteria. Maybe they don't have a missions component. Maybe they don't do discipleship well, whatever that is. But
well, I think that brings us kind of to the next point that I had taken some notes and thoughts that I had. And I think even going back to the initial conversation of like, is this church in the palm of your hand? I feel like what it does really well, and really what it is in essence, and what they should, pitch it as, is it's not a replacement for church. It's not a new like online campus. It's an extension of church. And I think that's for anyone, like capital C church, not just Churchome. And so I think you can find that community online. You can grow in your faith. Now I don't have to go to my church to attend, a morning Bible study. Like, I can watch online, and I feel like that's totally fine because people consume content that way. It's easier in those specific elements.
See, that's where I disagree. Like, I see your point, but I disagree with your point. Like, I'm in my mind is unless you have a real legitimate reason for not, there is an aspect in science, and we know this because science has shown us, there's an aspect of you being in the same room with somebody and having and being in the same space with somebody that allows you a level of intimacy that you can't replicate online. And so if your logic for not going to worship on Sunday morning is I can just watch it online because that's how I consume all my other content, there's the problem right there. You're not consuming content. If you,
Right. Yeah, I'm not meaning to replace that
yeah,
Sunday service. That's like, I want to make sure I preface that. Like, I'm saying for like that daily spark. Like,
yeah,
I don't need to go in and hear the pastor preach a
oh yeah,
2 minute message. Like those types of small, quick content. Or if I want to pray for somebody, I have a 10-minute lunch break. Like, let me, take some time and pray for people. Like those
yeah,
components I think are great, but I don't think they replace the Sunday,
yeah.
component of a church. So
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think the problem is what you pointed out was the language that we're using, which is
mhm,
consume content. And
right.
and I think the reality is what you're pointing out is a lot of people are looking at digital church much like they look at Netflix or Hulu or YouTube. I'm going to
Yeah.
go consume it. I checked it off. I've done
Right.
it. And to me, I'm like going, church is not a consumption activity, which is
Right.
what I get. Honestly, this is what I think that when it comes back to this app, this is what to me the main driver. This is a consumption app. It drives you to
Yeah.
do
Well,
some
I think it
things.
is what you make it though, Daryl. I think if you're viewing it as I'm consuming this and
Yeah.
that's your heart behind it, then that's your heart behind it. But I feel like if I'm setting aside time, just like I can use the YouVersion app to study the Bible, and it's the same type of app. I can view it as a consumption. Let me just read this to get it out of the way. It's more to me like it is what you make it, in that area.
Yeah, but
So
okay, but let me push on that. Okay, so like, do you really think? Do you really think somebody's actually going in here for 30 minutes a day and actually trying to have real community in this app?
I don't know. I mean, I think maybe I have groups that I'm in that I find real community online, and it's not for necessarily for church, so it's a little bit
Yeah,
different because there's not
yeah,
as much of a spiritual component. But I think if you wanted to do that, you could. That's kind of my point. If you say I'm a business owner, I'm super busy, like
yeah.
let me have 30 minutes. I'm gonna go in, and this is the easiest way and the best way for me to find community and grow in my faith. Great, that's awesome, and the Churchome app allows you to do that. So I think it just goes back to my point. Like it is really what you kind of
Yeah,
make it to be.
and what I'm pointing out is I think there's a couple different ways to do it, and I think Karina points us out to her comment is I get on a certain level I understand argument this is a bridge, so this is a bridge to get you into an actual
Hmm.
relationship with your people and physically come to one of our campuses, and I understand that at a certain level. My argument is that you're right, you can what you make of it, but let's be honest with you. Let's be honest. We do know for a fact that studies have shown, even last week, the more time you spend on Facebook, what happens? You get depressed. Okay.
Yeah.
So we know there is a device issue with the fact that it doesn't walk away. You don't walk away feeling better after using your device. It's just a fact. We also
Hmm.
know that when you use the device, you're going to have thousands of notifications hit you while you're on the device.
Right.
So
Right.
the level of conscientiousness you have to be about to set the device up in such a way by which you're going to get
Yeah.
out of it.
Right.
To
That is
me,
true.
there's too much friction points for that to happen. So
Yeah.
I get it. And I think there are some people who are digital natives who probably on some level do get something out of it. The
Yeah.
argument I'm making is I think when the way they presented it and then some of the stuff they've done inside the app can create a virtual Christian, which is basically
Yeah.
everything that I do that's Christian is inside this app. And we end up creating these two false selves where you have my real world self and my Christian self, which is basically inside the app.
Right. Right. At some point, it has to make that jump and that bridge into real life.
Yeah.
And I mean, like I said, here's my whole like
Yeah.
30,000 foot view of the app.
Yeah.
It's an extension of the church, and it's a great resource. Like me, I attend a church. My church doesn't have this type of resource, so I
Right.
use church homes. But I still go and I'm involved in small groups, or I'm involved in Sunday worship. I use this
Yeah.
during the week to continue to grow and continue to like be connected to a church. So in my mind, the way that church home should continue to do this and the way that they would be most beneficial for the capital C church is to partner with local churches all across the
Yeah.
country. I don't know how they would do that, but it's like, hey, here's our beliefs, here's our, we
Yeah.
agree to these things, so that it's similar theology. And then say, hey, on Sunday mornings, and so you can watch our worship service online if you want, but here's a list of churches in your area that are church home partners, right? Or partnering with like my church, if we had 50 small groups and we're a church home partner, now
Right.
all of a sudden I can punch in my zip code and I have 50 small groups plus any other church
Yeah.
in my area
Right.
that I can go to. So to me, what they should continue to do or do a better job of is pushing people from that digital phone that should be used as an extension of growing their faith into real community and real life.
I think it's great. I think your point out is like, I think churches would totally look at this different if all of a sudden the group component was, we want to get you plugged into a local church. It doesn't have to be ours. It just needs to be a local church that believes in some basic tenets of the faith, as you said, and then we get you in there. To me, that's how I think they just didn't think through how they framed it. So anyway, guys, we could talk about this for hours and hours on end, but Kyler has work to do and I have work to do as well. So
I don't, but that's all right.
Oh, okay. So I have work to do. So there we go. So I've got to do that. So anyway, guys, thanks for joining us for this podcast, this episode. Also, don't forget, if you like what this conversation, we have a lot of these conversations, not just in our Facebook group. We also have them in the premium group, which you can find out. Kyler, what's the easiest way to get and find out about the premium group?
I think there's a link at the top of the free group, but you can search for Church Communications Premium on Facebook. There's a free trial and you can join for 7 days. Check it out. We're going to be dropping some really good resources, especially in the next couple of days, even here, and in addition to what we currently have. Yep.
So guys, go ahead and check that out. And if you're watching this on Facebook, hit the big like button. We'd really appreciate it. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button as well. So, or even listen to the podcast, just give us a rating on iTunes. We would love that. So until next week, you guys take care and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, guys.